Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of stuff in your life? Not just the physical clutter filling your shelves and drawers, but the mental noise, the endless to-do lists, the constant pull of distractions. In a world that never seems to slow down, where we're bombarded with more choices, more possessions, and more demands than ever before, it's easy to feel like we're drowning in the chaos. But what if there was a way to cut through all that noise, to find clarity and calm amid the storm? That's exactly what the ancient philosophy of Stoicism offers, a timeless path to simplicity, one that's more relevant today than ever. Think about the growing movement toward minimalism, the way people are choosing to live with less, to prioritize quality over quantity. It's no accident that this trend aligns so closely with Stoic principles. 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Those words cut straight to the heart of our modern struggles. We chase after more money, more gadgets, more status, yet the more we accumulate, the heavier the weight feels. Stoicism flips that script. It teaches us that true freedom doesn't come from having everything, but from needing very little. This video is about unlocking that freedom. We'll explore how Stoic simplicity isn't just about decluttering your closet or tidying up your home, though those are part of it. It's about decluttering your mind, your habits, even your relationships. It's about learning to distinguish between what's essential and what's just noise. And most importantly, it's about finding a deeper sense of peace by embracing less. Because when you strip away the unnecessary, what's left isn't emptiness, it's space for what truly matters. So if you're ready to step off the treadmill of constant wanting and discover the quiet power of enough, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Stoic simplicity isn't just about owning fewer things, it's about reclaiming your attention, your time, and your peace. While modern minimalism often focuses on aesthetics or efficiency, Stoicism goes deeper. It asks, what are you making room for? Imagine your mind as a house. Every unnecessary possession, every distraction, every obligation you don't truly care about is like furniture crammed into the hallway. You can still move through life, but it's a constant struggle, bumping into things that don't belong. The Stoics recognized this 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That power starts with choosing what deserves space in your life. Consumer culture thrives on convincing us that more is better, that happiness lives in the next purchase, the next upgrade. But Stoicism flips that script. It's not deprivation, it's liberation. Think about the last time you bought something impulsively. Maybe it was a gadget you rarely use or clothes that still hang in your closet with the tags on. Now contrast that with something you truly value, a handwritten letter from a friend, a quiet morning with coffee and no distractions. Which one feels richer? The Stoics weren't against possessions, they were against being possessed by them. So what does clutter look like in your life? It might not just be physical objects. It could be the endless scroll of social media, the calendar packed with meetings that don't matter, or even relationships that drain more than they give. Stoic simplicity is about auditing all of it, asking, does this serve me? Does it align with who I want to be? Because when you remove what's unnecessary, something extraordinary happens. You're left with clarity, the kind that helps you spot opportunities, make better decisions, and savor the moments that actually matter. This isn't about living with less for its own sake. It's about making room for more of what makes life meaningful. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks up a mountain. Some of those rocks are yours, the weight of your choices, your efforts, your focus. But many of them don't belong to you at all. The weather, the opinions of strangers, the traffic jam that made you late. Yet there they are, strapped to your shoulders, exhausting you with every step. This is what happens when we confuse what we can control with what we can't. And it's exactly why the Stoic philosopher Epictetus drew a clear line between the two. His famous dichotomy of control isn't just philosophy, it's a tool for cutting through mental clutter. Here's how it works. Take a moment to list the things that stress you out. Now divide them into two columns. One for what you genuinely influence, your actions, your reactions, your priorities, and another for what's outside your hands, other people's choices, past mistakes, even the outcome of your efforts. That second column, Epictetus would say, those are the rocks you never needed to carry. Worrying about them doesn't change them, it just drains the energy you could spend on what actually matters. Let's make this real. Think about the last time you agonized over someone's opinion of you, maybe a coworker's offhand comment or a relative's judgment. How much mental space did that take up? How many imaginary arguments did you rehearse in your head? Now ask yourself, did overthinking it change their view? The truth is, people will think what they think, but here's what you can control: whether you internalize it, whether you let it steer your self-worth, whether you grant it rent-free space in your mind. This is the power of Stoic simplicity. It's not about ignoring life's complexities. It's about refusing to complicate what's inherently simple. The weather will ruin your picnic. The train will be delayed. Someone will misunderstand you. These things aren't clutter, they're just part of living. The clutter comes when we treat them like puzzles we can solve, carrying them as if they're ours to fix. So here's a challenge. Next time you catch yourself stressing over something outside your control, pause. Ask, is this my rock to carry? If not, set it down. Feel how much lighter it is to walk forward with only what's yours. There's a profound difference between accepting life as it comes and wrestling against it. A difference that can mean the weight of the world or the lightness of letting go. The Stoics called this Amor Fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. It's not passive resignation, it's an active embrace of what happens, even when it's not what we'd choose. Friedrich Nietzsche, who admired this Stoic idea, put it bluntly: "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." Imagine standing in the rain, cursing the clouds, versus dancing in it. Both scenarios involve getting wet, but only one leaves you exhausted from the fight. History gives us a striking example in Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who was exiled to Corsica by the Emperor Claudius. Instead of raging against his fate, Seneca wrote letters that reframed his banishment as an opportunity. "This very place where I'm exiled," he said, "is a place where others come for vacation." He didn't pretend it was easy, but he chose to see exile as a chance to study, write, and deepen his resilience. His circumstances didn't change, his perspective did, and that shift, from resistance to acceptance, freed him from the mental clutter of self-pity and what-ifs. Now think about your own life. Where are you spending energy fighting reality? Maybe it's a job you resent, a relationship that's changed, or even something as small as a delayed flight. Resistance doesn't alter the situation, it just layers frustration on top of it. Amor Fati asks, what if you stopped arguing with what is? Not to give up, but to redirect your effort from complaining to creating. The traffic jam won't vanish because you're angry, but you can use that time to listen to an audiobook or call a friend. The criticism you received won't unspool itself, but you can decide whether it's feedback to grow from or noise to ignore. This is where Stoic simplicity meets liberation. Every moment you spend resisting reality is a moment you could spend engaging with it, finding the hidden edges, the quiet lessons, the unexpected openings. Amor Fati doesn't mean you never take action. It means you start from a place of clarity, not clutter. So here's an invitation. Identify one situation you've been resisting. Then ask, what if I stopped treating this as an obstacle and started treating it as material to work with? The shift might feel small, but it's the difference between carrying rocks and building something with them. One of the most liberating practices in Stoicism is also one of the hardest to master: the art of letting go, not just of physical things, but of the emotional weight we attach to them. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly: keep in mind that everything you're attached to is already slipping away: the china cup, the favorite jacket, even the people you love. Holding on too tightly only makes the inevitable harder. That might sound bleak at first, but there's a hidden freedom in it. Imagine holding a handful of sand. Clench your fist and it pours through your fingers. Open your palm and it stays. The Stoics weren't teaching indifference. They were teaching us how to hold things lightly. Now think about the modern equivalent of that china cup, your phone. How many apps do you have that you never use? How many newsletters flood your inbox unread? Digital clutter might not take up physical space, but it drains your attention just as much. Every notification, every unfinished podcast in your queue, every app you open out of habit rather than purpose. These are the modern weights we carry without realizing it. And just like physical possessions, we often mistake accumulation for progress. Here's where Stoic detachment becomes practical. Start small. Delete one app today. Not because you should, but because you're reclaiming your focus. That game you haven't opened in months. The social media platform that leaves you scrolling mindlessly. Letting go isn't about loss, it's about creating room for what enriches you. The same principle applies to emotional baggage. That grudge you're nursing, the old mistake you replay in your head. What if you treated them like apps draining your battery? You wouldn't keep a broken tool in your workshop. Why keep broken thoughts in your mind? This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about discerning what deserves your energy. The Stoics didn't avoid love or joy. They avoided dependency on externals for their peace. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. He wasn't being morbid. He was reminding us that time is the one possession we can't replenish. So ask yourself, what are you holding onto that's no longer serving you? And what could you do right now to loosen your grip? Mindful consumption isn't just a modern trend, it's a Stoic superpower. Picture this: you're standing in a store holding an item you didn't plan to buy. It's shiny, it's on sale, and for a moment it feels like it might fill some unnamed void. This exact moment is where Stoicism meets the shopping cart. 2,000 years ago, Musonius Rufus, the lesser-known but equally sharp Stoic teacher, put it bluntly: frugality is the daughter of self-control, the sister of freedom, and the mother of contentment. He wasn't preaching austerity. He was pointing out that every unnecessary purchase is a chain we willingly clasp around our own wrists. Now, contrast that with today's culture of impulse buying. How many of us have clicked checkout at midnight only to wonder why we ordered that gadget the next morning? The difference between Stoic frugality and mindless consumption isn't about spending less, it's about spending intentionally. Think of your last unnecessary purchase. Maybe it was that kitchen gadget now buried in a drawer, or the trendy shirt you wore once. What emotion drove that decision? Boredom, stress, the fleeting high of new. Stoicism asks us to interrogate those impulses, not to punish ourselves, but to reclaim agency over our choices. Here's where the Stoic pause rule comes in. Before any non-essential purchase, wait 24 hours, not as a punishment but as a space to ask, do I need this or just want it? Will this add real value to my life, or is it clutter in disguise? This simple gap between impulse and action is where wisdom grows. The ancient Stoics didn't have online shopping carts, but they understood the human tendency to confuse desire with need. Musonius taught that luxury doesn't satisfy, it inflames. The more we acquire, the more we train ourselves to crave. But the reverse is also true. The more we pause, the more we strengthen our ability to choose what aligns with our values. Imagine applying this to your next potential purchase. That thing you're eyeing right now, would you still want it tomorrow if it weren't on sale? If you had to carry it home on foot instead of clicking a button? This isn't about depriving yourself. It's about distinguishing between the momentary thrill of acquisition and the lasting satisfaction of living in alignment with your principles. The Stoics weren't against possessions, they were against being possessed by possessions. Every time you pause, you're not just saving money, you're practicing the art of self-mastery, one decision at a time. So here's a challenge. Look back at your last 3 unnecessary purchases. What did they have in common? Were they attempts to fill time, soothe stress, or keep up with some invisible standard? Now flip the script. What's one thing you didn't buy that you're now grateful for? That's the quiet power of Stoic simplicity. It doesn't just clear your shelves, it clears your vision, helping you see what's truly worth your resources. Because in the end, the richest aren't those who have the most, but those who need the least. The sun hasn't yet risen, the world is still quiet, and for a few precious moments, the day belongs entirely to you. This is the space where Stoic simplicity comes alive, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet consistency of routine. The ancient Stoics didn't wait for chaos to strike before preparing their minds. They built resilience daily, like blacksmiths tempering steel. Seneca, one of history's most famous Stoics, ended each evening with a simple but profound practice. He'd ask himself, what evils did you cure today? What weaknesses did you resist? In what way are you better? This wasn't self-criticism. It was a way to distill clarity from the noise of the day. Think about your own mornings. How often do they start with a reflexive grab for your phone, plunging straight into emails, news, or social media? Compare that to Seneca's approach, beginning and ending the day with intentional reflection. The difference isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. Studies show that how you start your morning sets the tone for your brain's entire day. A rushed, reactive beginning primes you for distraction. A mindful one, it creates a foundation of focus. Here's where Stoic routine becomes practical. Try this template tomorrow. What will I focus on today? Not a to-do list, but a single intention. Maybe it's patience with your kids, full presence in a meeting, or simply noticing when you're reacting impulsively. The power lies in its simplicity. Marcus Aurelius framed his mornings with a similar lens, writing, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That shift from "what do I need to do" to "how do I want to be" changes everything. Your ritual doesn't need to be elaborate. It could be 5 minutes with a notebook, a walk around the block without headphones, or even just staring at your coffee while you mentally rehearse the day ahead. The key is consistency. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher born into slavery, knew this well. He taught that discipline isn't about punishment, it's about freedom. The athlete who trains daily isn't confined by their routine, they're liberated by it. The same applies to your mind. So here's your invitation. Design a morning ritual that serves you, not the other way around. It might borrow from Seneca's questions, Marcus's gratitude, or Epictetus's focus on what you can control, but make it yours, because when you start the day anchored in purpose, the clutter of the world, the distractions, the demands, the endless more, doesn't disappear. It just loses its power to steer you, and that's when you discover the quiet strength of a life lived on purpose. Negative visualization might sound counterintuitive. Why would anyone deliberately imagine worst-case scenarios? But this ancient Stoic practice called premeditatio malorum isn't about pessimism, it's about inoculation. Think of it like this: you wouldn't wait for a storm to test your roof's strength. You'd inspect it beforehand, patching weak spots so when the rain comes, you're prepared. That's what the Stoics were doing when they practiced envisioning loss. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a philosopher, drilled this into his students. Remind yourself that the object of your love is mortal, that what you cherish isn't your own but given for now. Harsh maybe, but there's liberation in that honesty. Here's how it works in practice. Say you're anxious about losing your job. Instead of avoiding the thought, lean into it. Imagine clearing your desk, packing your belongings, even facing financial strain. Now notice what happens. Your mind starts problem solving. I'd update my resume, reach out to my network, maybe downsize temporarily. The fear doesn't vanish, but its power shrinks. Why? Because you've stripped away the uncertainty, the worst part of any what if. Seneca used this technique daily, visualizing the loss of his wealth, his status, even his life. Not to torment himself, but to realize, I'd still be me, I'd still find a way forward. Now apply this to clutter, physical or mental, that stack of unread books you feel guilty about. Imagine them burning in a fire. Suddenly, their presence on your shelf feels lighter, doesn't it? Not because they're worthless, but because you see them for what they are, optional. Negative visualization isn't about dismissing what you have. It's about holding it loosely so possessions or worries don't possess you. Try it today with something small. Stuck in traffic, instead of fuming, pretend your car just broke down. How would you handle it? Call a friend, walk. Notice how your frustration shifts from the delay to gratitude that it's only a delay. The Stoics weren't masochists, they were realists. By regularly touching the bottom mentally, they discovered it wasn't a pit, just solid ground they could stand on. And that's the secret. When you stop fearing loss, you stop clinging so tightly to things that, in the grand scheme, might not matter as much as you think. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius' private journal survived 2,000 years, not because he intended it for publication, but because he understood the power of putting pen to paper to untangle the mind. His Meditations wasn't a polished masterpiece. It was a messy, raw conversation with himself. Lines like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," weren't proverbs crafted for an audience. They were reminders scrawled in the quiet hours, a way to sift through the noise of an emperor's burdens. And here's the thing, you don't need to rule an empire to benefit from the same practice. Stoic journaling isn't about elegant prose or perfect grammar. It's about decluttering your thoughts one sentence at a time. Think of your mind as a room where every unresolved thought, every nagging worry, every half-formed idea is left lying around. Without a system, the mess accumulates until you're tripping over mental clutter every time you try to focus. Journaling is the act of picking those things up, examining them, and deciding what to keep. The Stoics knew this intuitively. Epictetus, who taught that we suffer not from events but from our judgments about them, urged his students to write down your principles and read them daily. Why? Because when you externalize your thoughts, you gain distance from them. That argument with your coworker that's been looping in your head for hours. Write it down, and suddenly it's not a storm raging inside you. It's just words on a page, waiting to be solved or released. Here's how to start. Tonight before bed, set a timer for 5 minutes and ask yourself, what distracted me today? Not in a self-critical way, but with curiosity. Was it the ping of your phone, the urge to check news headlines, or the mental replay of a conversation that didn't go as planned? The goal isn't to judge, it's to notice patterns. Marcus Aurelius did this relentlessly, questioning his own reactions. Why feel irritated when the door creaks? Your own mind is what makes the creaking significant. Your journal is where you spot those creaks, the tiny distractions that steal your focus, the petty resentments that weigh more than they should. For a deeper dive, try this 3-prompt rotation. First night, what did I mistake for a necessity today? That urgent email, the impulse buy, the need to have the last word. Second night, where did I resist reality instead of working with it? The delayed flight you fumed over, the plan that changed without your consent. Third night, what small act aligned with my values? The pause before snapping at your kids, the choice to walk instead of scroll. This isn't self-help, it's self-awareness. The Stoics didn't journal to fix themselves, they journaled to see themselves clearly, like wiping fog from a mirror. The magic of this practice lies in its simplicity. You're not writing for posterity, you're writing to empty the mental cache, to separate signal from noise. Seneca described letters to his friend Lucilius as a form of self-therapy, a way to assess my day, to sort what I'd harmed and what I'd healed. That's the heart of Stoic journaling. It's not about recording your life, but refining it. So grab any notebook, no fancy pens required, and start with 5 minutes. The blank page doesn't demand wisdom, it just asks honesty, and sometimes the act of writing down the chaos is the first step toward leaving it behind. Seneca once observed that being busy is a form of laziness, lazy thinking, and indiscriminate action. It's a jarring idea at first. How could busyness, something we wear like a badge of honor, be a weakness? But consider your phone for a moment. How often do you unlock it not for a purpose, but out of habit? That reflexive scroll through social media, the compulsive email check, the endless swipe of news headlines. This isn't productivity. It's mental clutter disguised as activity. The Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they understood distraction's corrosive power. Seneca warned his friend Lucilius about filling his days with mere busyness, comparing it to running in circles, exhausting motion without progress. Now apply that to your screen time. The average person touches their phone over 2,000 times a day, a staggering number when you realize how few of those interactions are deliberate. Digital minimalism isn't about rejecting technology, it's about reclaiming agency over your attention. Just as the Stoics sorted possessions into useful and superfluous, we can audit our digital lives. Start by tracking your screen time this week. You might discover that 3 hours daily vanish into apps you don't even enjoy. That's not just time lost, it's focus fractured, peace eroded by 1,000 tiny interruptions. Here's where the Stoic practice of premeditatio becomes practical. Imagine losing access to your most used app for a month, not as a punishment but as an experiment. What would you miss, the connection or just the dopamine hits? Often, we conflate utility with addiction. Epictetus advised examining attachments by asking, if you kiss your child or your wife, say that you only kiss things which are human, and thus you will not be disturbed if either of them dies. Harsh, absolutely, but the underlying principle is liberation. When we name our dependencies, we weaken their grip. Try this with your phone. Instead of vaguely wanting to use it less, identify one app that drains more than it gives. Is it the endless political debates, the comparison traps of curated feeds, or the hollow reward of unread notifications? Name it. Then set a boundary. Maybe you'll only check it after noon or for 10 minutes max. For a deeper reset, consider a digital Sabbath one day weekly where screens serve only essential needs, not as deprivation, but as a space to remember what else exists. The Stoics treasured otium, purposeful leisure, time to read, walk, or simply sit with one's thoughts. Seneca wrote, "Leisure without study is death, a tomb for the living person." Your digital Sabbath might reveal how often you reach for your phone to avoid stillness. That first hour might feel unnerving, like withdrawal, but soon you'll notice the return of something precious, uninterrupted thought. The kind that lets you hear your own values again. This isn't about unplugging permanently. It's about inserting a pause between impulse and action, the same pause Epictetus championed when he said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." Your phone is a tool. The question is, are you using it or is it using you? Start small. Track your screen time like a Stoic accountant auditing expenses. Then, like Seneca pruning unnecessary commitments, delete one app that no longer serves who you're trying to become. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Because every minute you reclaim from mindless scrolling is a minute returned to your life's true work, building something meaningful with the time you've got. Imagine wearing a backpack filled with rocks labeled should look a certain way, should own certain things, should be further along by now. That invisible weight is expectation, and it's one of the heaviest forms of mental clutter we carry. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery before teaching emperors, had a razor-sharp insight about this. If someone tried to take control of your body and hand you over to a passerby, you'd be furious. So why aren't you furious when you hand over your mind to anyone who insults you, letting them upset you? He wasn't dismissing the sting of criticism. He was pointing out how often we voluntarily carried judgments that were never ours to hold. Consider social media, a modern marketplace of expectations. Scrolling through curated lives, it's easy to mistake highlights for reality, measuring your unedited days against someone else's filtered moments. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes daily significantly reduced loneliness and depression. Why? Because comparison isn't just the thief of joy, it's the architect of unnecessary mental clutter. Every time you absorb someone else's perfect career, relationship, or body as a benchmark, you're adding another rock to that backpack. Here's where Stoicism offers a liberating alternative. Epictetus advised his students to treat opinions like objects at a market. If someone offers you a cheap trinket and you decline, they'll take it back. Do the same with insults or praise. That toxic account you follow, the one that leaves you feeling inadequate or agitated, why keep accepting what it's offering? Unfollowing isn't weakness, it's the act of setting down a rock you never needed to carry. Try this experiment today. Open your social media with the eyes of a Stoic auditor. For every account you scroll past, ask, does this serve me? Does it align with who I'm trying to become? If the answer isn't a clear yes, that's mental clutter in digital form. The goal isn't to create an echo chamber, but to curate an environment that reflects your values, not others' expectations. Marcus Aurelius warned, it's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They're inescapable, just try to escape your own. When you stop carrying the weight of others' shoulds, you'll notice something extraordinary. The space that opens up isn't empty. It's room to breathe, to move, to finally hear your own voice again. Every decision you make, from what to eat for lunch to whether to change careers, is a tiny vote for the kind of person you're becoming. The Stoics had a word for this deliberate choosing, prohearsies, the art of aligning your actions with your deepest values. Epictetus framed it as life's ultimate sorting tool. What's up to you? Your judgments, impulses, desires, aversions, What's not up to you, your body, possessions, reputation, power. At first glance, that might sound limiting. But here's the twist. When you focus your energy only on what you can control, your choices, you're not shrinking your power, you're sharpening it. Picture standing at a crossroads where every path is labeled with a different value. One sign says approval, another pleasure, a third integrity. Prohearsies is the act of pausing long enough to read those signs before stepping forward. Most of us move through life on autopilot, reacting to whatever feels urgent or appealing in the moment. The Stoic alternative: ask one simple question: does this serve my virtue? Not virtue as in moral perfection, but virtue as your personal North Star, the qualities you most want to embody. For Marcus Aurelius, it was wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. For you, it might be honesty, creativity, or compassion. Here's how to put this into practice. Think of a decision you're wrestling with right now. Maybe it's whether to say yes to a social event when you're exhausted, or whether to confront a coworker about unfair treatment. Now apply the Stoic test. Which choice aligns with the person I'm trying to become? The answer isn't always easy. That party invite might promise short-term fun but conflict with your value of rest. Speaking up at work might feel uncomfortable, but honor your commitment to fairness. Prohearsies doesn't guarantee comfort, it guarantees congruence. Epictetus offered a revealing metaphor. Imagine your principles are laws you've sworn to uphold. Would you cheat on them for a better seat at dinner? Modern life is full of those metaphorical seats, distractions, shortcuts, and temptations that pull us off course. The power of Stoic decision-making lies in its simplicity. You don't need endless pros and cons lists. You just need to keep returning to that core question: does this serve what matters most? Over time, those small, intentional choices compound. They're how you build a life that doesn't just look good on the surface, but feels right at the core. So here's your challenge. Before your next decision, big or small, create a moment of pause, not to overthink but to check in. Ask yourself, if I choose this, what quality am I practicing? Patience or avoidance, courage or people-pleasing? The clarity might surprise you, because when you stop deciding based on external measures, what others think, what feels easiest, and start choosing from internal alignment, something shifts. The clutter of indecision falls away, leaving only the path that's truly yours. We've been sold a lie, the idea that happiness lies just beyond the next purchase, the next promotion, the next milestone. But Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who advised Emperor Nero, saw through this illusion 2,000 years ago. His words cut straight to the heart of our modern dilemma. Wealth is the slave of the wise, the master of the fool. Think about that for a moment. The more we chase after external markers of success, the more we become servants to them, constantly hustling, striving, and accumulating, yet never quite arriving. It's a paradox. We believe more will set us free, but it often chains us tighter. Now, contrast this with today's hustle culture. The late-night emails worn like badges of honor, the side hustles stacked on side hustles, the relentless pressure to monetize every hobby. There's nothing wrong with ambition, but when does it cross the line from purposeful effort into a never-ending race? The Stoics would ask, what's the point of all this striving if it leaves no room to actually live? Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much. We lose it in the mindless pursuit of more money, more followers, more possessions, mistaking motion for meaning." Here's the radical truth Stoicism offers. Happiness isn't found in the endless accumulation of things, but in the realization that you already have enough. Not as a platitude, but as a practical shift in perspective. Take a moment to list 3 things you already have enough of. Maybe it's the jacket that's kept you warm for years. the well-worn book you return to for wisdom, or the simple pleasure of a quiet morning with nowhere to rush. These aren't small things, they're the foundation of contentment. The Stoics called this autarkeia, the state of being satisfied with what you have. It's not about settling, it's about recognizing that the chase for more often distracts from what's already here. Modern research backs this up. Studies on happiness consistently show that beyond a basic level of comfort, additional wealth does little to increase long-term fulfillment. In fact, the more we tie our self-worth to external achievements, the more we set ourselves up for a moving target of dissatisfaction. Seneca put it bluntly, until we have begun to go without, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. That's the power of Stoic simplicity. It's not deprivation, but liberation from the myth that more is always better. So here's your invitation today. When you feel the pull of just one more, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly adding value or just adding weight? The joy of enough isn't found in lack. It's found in the space that opens when we stop chasing and start appreciating. Because the richest moments in life often come not from what we acquire, but from what we finally let go of. Silence was never empty for the Stoics, it was fertile ground. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome at the height of its power, famously wrote, "Nowhere can a person find a more peaceful and less busy retreat than in their own mind." Imagine that, an emperor responsible for millions, presiding over wars and political intrigue, yet finding his calmest sanctuary within. This wasn't passive escapism, it was active resistance against the tyranny of noise. In a world where even elevators play music and phones buzz with endless alerts, Stoic silence is revolutionary. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of space to hear yourself think. Consider your own relationship with quiet. When was the last time you sat without background noise, no podcasts, no playlists, no screens filling the air with artificial stimulation? For many of us, silence feels uncomfortable at first, like stepping into a room we've forgotten how to inhabit. That discomfort is telling. The Stoics understood that silence isn't just a break from noise, it's a mirror. Without distraction, we're forced to confront our thoughts, the productive ones, the petty ones, even the ones we've been avoiding. Epictetus observed, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But in the modern world, we've flipped that ratio, constantly outputting, talking, typing, reacting without leaving room to receive. Here's where practice comes in. Start with 10 minutes of intentional silence today, not meditation with guided breathing or mantras, but pure, unstructured quiet. Sit by a window, walk without headphones, or simply stare at the steam rising from your coffee. Notice what happens. At first, your mind might rebel, itching to fill the void with plans or regrets. That's normal. Marcus Aurelius described this too. The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Silence is where you get to curate those thoughts instead of letting them autoplay. The benefits go deeper than relaxation. Neuroscientists have found that silence triggers the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection, creativity, and problem-solving. It's why showers and long drives often spark breakthroughs. Without external input, your mind finally has room to connect dots. The Stoics were onto this millennia ago. Seneca's letters often describe retreating to his country villa not to escape work, but to do his best work, free from Rome's cacophony. He wasn't avoiding life, he was sharpening his ability to engage with it. Try this reframe. Think of silence as strength training for your attention. Every time you resist the urge to fill a quiet moment with stimulation, you're building focus muscles. Start small, 2 minutes waiting in line without pulling out your phone, a commute with the radio off. These are modern versions of Marcus Aurelius turning inward amid palace chaos. The goal isn't to eliminate noise permanently. It's to remember you have a choice in how much you let in, because in the end, silence isn't about shutting out the world. It's about returning to yourself one quiet moment at a time. Gratitude might seem like an unlikely tool for decluttering, but the Stoics understood its power centuries before modern science caught up. Picture your mind as a spotlight. Whatever you focus on grows brighter, while everything else fades into the background. Epictetus, the philosopher who rose from slavery to mentor Rome's elite, put it plainly: he is rich who is content. That single sentence dismantles the entire myth that abundance equals happiness. Real wealth isn't measured in possessions, but in the ability to appreciate what you already have. Science now backs this ancient wisdom. A landmark study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who practiced daily gratitude exercises reported significantly lower levels of materialism. They were less likely to equate self-worth with ownership. Why? Because gratitude shifts your attention from what's missing to what's present. Every time you pause to acknowledge the warmth of sunlight through your window or the reliability of your favorite pen, you're subtly reprogramming your brain. Consumer culture thrives on manufactured discontent, whispering that you need the next upgrade to be happy. Gratitude mutes that noise. Here's how to put this into practice tonight. Before bed, list 3 specific things you're grateful for, not grand abstractions like health or family, but concrete moments. The way your sheets felt cool when you climbed into bed, the taste of fresh bread at breakfast, a coworker's unexpected kindness. This specificity is key. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his journal, noting appreciation for everything from his teacher's patience to the way figs ripen in stages. The act of naming small, ordinary blessings trains your mind to spot them more often, crowding out the mental clutter of "if only" and "more." But Stoic gratitude isn't just feel-good positivity. It's a radical act of resistance against the endless chase for more. Seneca wrote letters from exile, finding value in his harsh surroundings, the solitude to think, the birds outside his window. He wasn't pretending his circumstances were ideal. He was choosing to mine them for meaning. Your nightly list works the same way. On hectic days, you might grasp for straws, grateful the elevator didn't break, that your old shoes are still comfortable. That's the point. You're not manufacturing bliss. You're discovering how much you overlook when focused solely on lack. Try this twist for deeper impact. Once a week, add 1 item to your gratitude list that initially felt like an inconvenience. The delayed flight that let you finish a book, the broken appliance that taught you a repair skill. This is Stoic gratitude in action, not just appreciating good fortune, but reframing obstacles as raw material for growth. Over time, you'll notice a shift. The impulse to acquire fades because fulfillment isn't something you purchase, it's something you practice, one small acknowledgement at a time. The clutter we regret isn't just the unused items in our homes, it's the unappreciated gifts in our lives. Epictetus said contentment was wealth because it makes every moment a dividend. Your gratitude list isn't homework, it's the ledger where you tally real riches. Start tonight, not with grand gestures, but with the quiet recognition of a single moment that mattered. That's how you declutter the soul. How much of what occupies your mind today will still matter in 12 months? The bills will get paid, the deadlines will pass, but what about that snide comment replaying in your thoughts or the guilt over an unused gym membership? This is where the Stoic 1-year test cuts through the noise. Seneca, who wrote extensively about time as life's most precious currency, warned that we are tight-fisted with property and money, yet think too little of wasting time, the one thing about which we should all be the toughest misers. That gym membership collecting dust, in a year you'll either have used it or cancelled it, but the mental energy spent agonizing over it now is time you'll never reclaim. Apply this lens to your physical space. That drawer of tangled cables and obsolete chargers, will anyone care in a year whether you kept them, just in case? Emotional clutter follows the same rule. The argument you rehash in your head, the career comparison that leaves you feeling inadequate, zoom out. Most of these mental loops won't even register on your radar 12 months from now. The one-year test isn't about dismissing present concerns. It's about distinguishing between what's truly significant and what's just static. Here's how to put it into practice today. Grab a notebook and make 2 columns, still relevant and expired. Under expired, list one worry, obligation, or possession that's outlived its purpose. Maybe it's the guilt over not attending every social event or the boxes of old paperwork you've been meaning to shred. Then ask, if I let this go today, would my life be poorer a year from now? Often, you'll find the answer is no. What you're releasing isn't value, but the illusion of control. For a deeper challenge, try Seneca's version, extend the timeline. Imagine you've been given only a week to live, he wrote. How would your priorities shift? Suddenly, that scratched coffee table or unresolved group chat drama loses its grip. The urgency fades, revealing what actually deserves your limited attention. This exercise isn't morbid, it's clarifying. Like shaking a snow globe, it helps the debris settle so you can see the landscape clearly. Your assignment: identify one expired item, physical or emotional, and discard it this week. Not because it's easy, but because every choice to release what no longer serves you is a choice to invest in what does. Because time, as Seneca reminds us, is the one currency you can't earn back. Spend it wisely. Marcus Aurelius ended his days with a simple but profound ritual. He'd review his actions like an impartial witness, asking not, "What did I accomplish?" but "How did I show up?" This nightly audit wasn't about tallying productivity. It was about aligning rest with integrity. Modern science now confirms what the Stoics intuited. The quality of your sleep is inseparable from the clarity of your mind. A Harvard study found that just 5 nights of poor sleep reduces cognitive performance by as much as a blood alcohol level of 0.06. In Stoic terms, neglecting sleep isn't just bad health, it's surrendering control of your judgment, the very faculty Epictetus called the commander's seat. Consider your own pre-sleep routine. Does it involve one last scroll through emails or social media, flooding your brain with cortisol-spiking stimuli right as it needs to wind down? The Stoics didn't face blue light exposure, but they understood the danger of letting the day's chaos bleed into the night. Seneca described his evenings as a sacred space for reflection, not reaction. He'd unwind by reading philosophy or dictating letters, activities that engaged his mind without agitating it. The parallel today: swap the screen for a book, preferably physical, since the tactile act of turning pages signals to your brain that it's time to transition. Here's how to adapt Marcus Aurelius' reflection for modern nights. Instead of replaying regrets or tomorrow's to-do list, ask 2 questions. What did I learn today? And where did I practice virtue? The first anchors growth over guilt. The second reinforces intentional living. Research from Baylor University shows that writing down lessons learned before bed enhances memory consolidation by nearly 20%. Pair this with a 10-minute screen sunset, powering down devices an hour before sleep, and you've created a bridge between ancient wisdom and neuroscience. For those who argue they don't have time for sleep hygiene, remember Seneca's warning. You're not short on time, you're drowning in distractions. The average person spends 2.5 hours daily on social media, more than enough to reclaim 30 minutes for proper rest. Start small. Tonight, charge your phone outside the bedroom. Notice how the absence of that tiny blinking light shifts your relationship with darkness from something to avoid to something that cradles your focus. The Stoics saw night not as wasted hours but as fertile ground for renewal. Your mind doesn't need more stimulation before sleep. It needs the quiet courage to let the day be done. So here's your challenge. For 1 week, treat your pre-sleep ritual like a Stoic would, as sacred preparation for tomorrow's battles, not with rigid perfection but with deliberate care. The clarity you'll gain isn't just about feeling rested, it's about waking up as the person you're trying to become. Freedom thrives within boundaries, a paradox the Stoics understood well. Picture standing in front of an overstuffed closet, paralyzed by too many choices, or scrolling endlessly through streaming platforms only to feel less satisfied than if you'd had 3 clear options. This is the tyranny of unlimited choice, and Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who lived simply even as Rome's elites clamored for his wisdom, saw right through it. The person who has many possessions, he observed, is not the one who has plenty but the one who needs least. That's the secret hidden in plain sight. Constraints don't confine us, they clarify. Take the capsule wardrobe, a modern twist on Stoic simplicity. By limiting yourself to 30 versatile pieces, you're not sacrificing style. You're liberating time and mental energy once spent on deciding what to wear. Every morning becomes an exercise in focused creativity rather than decision fatigue. Marcus Aurelius modeled this with his famously sparse attire, writing, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." His point, what you wear matters less than the mind it clothes. A minimalist wardrobe isn't about fashion. It's about removing trivial choices to preserve energy for what truly counts. Now apply this principle beyond your closet. Where else could intentional limits set you free? Consider your digital life. The average smartphone user interacts with 80 apps per month, yet research shows most derive value from just 15. What if you imposed a strict cap, say 20 apps total? Suddenly, every download becomes a deliberate act. You delete the time-sucking games, the redundant social platforms, the tools you never use. The result, a phone that serves you instead of scattering your attention. Musonius Rufus would approve. He taught that luxury doesn't satisfy, it distracts, creating needs where none existed. For a deeper challenge, try limiting your news consumption to 30 minutes daily from one trusted source. In an age of endless headlines, this constraint forces you to distinguish between information and noise. The Stoics didn't chase every update from Rome's Senate. They focused on what they could influence. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, knew this intimately. If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. The freedom you gain isn't just time, it's the clarity to engage deeply where it matters. Here's the invitation: pick one area: clothing, apps, news, even commitments, and impose a Stoic limit this week. Not as deprivation, but as an experiment in focus. Notice what happens when you stop watering weeds and start nurturing the garden. Because true freedom isn't found in having every option. It's found in choosing exactly enough. Emotions can pile up like unread emails in your mind, each one demanding attention, weighing you down, cluttering your mental space until it's hard to focus on anything else. Seneca nailed this when he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Think about the last time you lost sleep over an awkward conversation or a future event that never even happened. The pain wasn't in the moment itself, it was in the endless replays, the what-ifs multiplying like shadows. Stoic emotional decluttering isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about untangling them, separating the real from the imagined, so you're left with only what deserves your energy. One of the most powerful tools for this is the Stoic View from above exercise. Picture yourself floating high above the earth, watching your life unfold like a tiny scene in a vast landscape. From this vantage point, that argument with your sibling or the criticism from your boss shrinks to its true size, a fleeting moment in a much larger story. Marcus Aurelius used this technique to ground himself amid the pressures of ruling an empire. He'd remind himself, soon you'll be ashes or bones, a mere name at best, and even that is just a sound, an echo. It sounds stark, but there's relief in it. When you zoom out, resentments that felt monumental start to look like specks of dust on a windshield, easy to wipe away once you notice they're there. Now bring this down to earth. Think of one resentment you've been carrying, maybe a friend's careless remark or a colleague who took credit for your idea. Instead of replaying it, try naming it aloud. Literally say, "This is the story I've been telling myself." That simple act, externalizing the narrative, creates just enough distance to ask, is this still serving me? Often, you'll find the weight isn't in the event itself, but in the retelling. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to strip things of the legends we've attached to them. The coworker who annoyed you isn't a villain, they're just human, flawed like everyone else. The friend's comment wasn't a betrayal, it was a slip of the tongue. When you stop feeding the story, the emotion starves. Here's your challenge. Before bed tonight, pick one resentment and perform a Stoic release ritual. Write it on a scrap of paper, then burn it safely or tear it up. As you do, say, "This no longer belongs to me." You're not pretending the hurt didn't happen, you're choosing to stop paying interest on a debt that's already been settled. Because emotional clutter isn't just about what you feel, it's about what you refuse to let go of. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is drop the weight you've grown used to carrying. Relationships often feel like emotional tug of war, every disagreement, every expectation, every silent resentment pulling us further off balance. The Stoics saw this coming 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching philosophy, offered a revolutionary perspective. If someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself against what was said, but reply, "Yes, and he doesn't know my other faults, or he would have mentioned those too." At first glance, that might sound like self-deprecation. But look closer, it's a masterclass in emotional insulation. By refusing to take insults personally, you drain them of their power. The criticism doesn't vanish, it just stops mattering. Think about the last time someone's opinion of you kept you up at night. Maybe it was a relative's disapproval or a co-worker's passive-aggressive comment. Now imagine responding like Epictetus, not with anger or defensiveness, but with amused detachment. Oh, if only they knew the rest. This isn't about dismissing feedback. It's about recognizing that others' judgments are their own baggage, not yours to carry. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that people who practice cognitive distancing, viewing criticism as external, rather than personal experience, significantly lower stress levels. But Stoic relationships aren't just about deflecting negativity, they're about cultivating intentional connections. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his own life, writing, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Again, that might sound bleak until you realize he's not condemning others, but preparing himself to engage with compassion rather than frustration. It's the difference between expecting roses without thorns and handling the thorns skillfully when they appear. Here's where boundaries come in. Stoicism doesn't demand you tolerate toxic behavior. It teaches you to respond with clarity, not reactivity. Say a friend consistently cancels plans last minute. The Stoic approach isn't to fume silently or lash out, it's to calmly adjust your expectations. This person is unreliable. I'll stop depending on them for time-sensitive commitments. No drama, no ultimatums, just a pragmatic recalibration. Research from the University of California found that people who set clear emotional boundaries report higher relationship satisfaction because they engage from choice, not obligation. Now apply this to your own life. Identify one relationship that leaves you emotionally drained, not necessarily a blatantly toxic one, just one that consistently costs more energy than it gives. Maybe it's the neighbor who always turns chats into complaints, or the family member who subtly undermines your choices. Ask yourself, what am I expecting from this person that they've shown they can't or won't provide? Then experiment with lowering those expectations to match reality, not your hopes. You might still interact, but you'll stop setting yourself up for disappointment. The goal isn't to cut people off, it's to engage with eyes wide open. Seneca wrote letters to friends who betrayed him, not to reconcile, but to express his perspective without bitterness. I don't hate you, he'd say, but I no longer trust you. That Stoic boundary setting, clear, kind, and unshakably firm. So tonight, reflect on one relationship where you've been carrying resentment. Then try Epictetus's twist laugh at the pettiness of it all. Not because the hurt isn't real, but because you're finally ready to stop letting it dictate your peace. The present moment is the only place life actually happens, yet how often do we miss it? Lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who led Rome through war and plague, scribbled this reminder in his journal: don't let the future disturb you. You will meet it with the same weapons of reason and mind that guard you now. At its core, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about fully inhabiting the now, because that's where your power resides. Think of it like holding water in your hands. Clench your fists in worry or distraction, and it all slips through. Open your palms present, attentive, and for that moment you hold everything you need. Modern mindfulness practices echo this ancient wisdom, but the Stoics framed it with urgent clarity. Life is short. You could leave life right now, Marcus wrote. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not as morbid fixation, but as a lens to sharpen focus. The meeting you're dreading, the chores you're rushing through, these aren't interruptions to real life. They are real life. Every moment spent mentally elsewhere is a small betrayal of the time you'll never get back. Here's a simple way to reclaim the present, the 5 senses grounding technique. Pause wherever you are and name silently or aloud one thing you see, one you hear, one you feel physically, one you smell, and one you taste. It could be as ordinary as the hum of your refrigerator or the weight of your shoes on the floor. This isn't just calming, it's Stoic training. Epictetus taught that our perceptions are the raw material of our lives. By anchoring yourself in sensory reality, you're refusing to let your mind be hijacked by hypotheticals. For a deeper challenge, try spending 1 full hour today without distractions, no phone, no multitasking, no mental rehearsals of conversations that haven't happened. Just you, fully engaged in whatever you're doing. If you're washing dishes, feel the warmth of the water. If you're walking, notice the rhythm of your breath. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently guide it back like training a puppy to heel. The Stoics would call this prosouch attention as a spiritual discipline. Seneca described it as owning your hours, the ultimate rebellion against a culture that prizes busyness over presence. At first, this might feel uncomfortable, even wasteful. We've been conditioned to equate productivity with constant motion. But consider, when was the last time you truly tasted your food, listened without planning your response, or noticed the way sunlight shifts through a room? Those aren't small moments, they're the fabric of a life fully lived. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his most enduring legacy is a reminder to confine yourself to the present. Not because the past and future don't matter, but because the now is the only place you can ever actually live. So today, when you catch yourself mentally time traveling, remember, this moment, ordinary as it seems, is the one you'll one day miss. Don't let it slip through your fingers unseen. Imagine waking up one morning and deliberately choosing discomfort, skipping breakfast, taking a cold shower, or walking instead of driving. At first glance, this might seem pointless, even masochistic, but the Stoics saw voluntary hardship as mental weight training. Seneca, who amassed great wealth yet regularly practiced what he called poverty training, would set aside days to wear threadbare clothes, sleep on the floor, and eat only stale bread. His reasoning was profound. Set aside a certain number of days to be content with the scantiest food and clothing, saying to yourself, "Is this the condition I feared?" This wasn't self-punishment. It was stress testing his resilience, proving to himself that his peace didn't depend on external comforts. Think of it like vaccination, a small, controlled exposure to hardship that strengthens your immunity to life's inevitable disruptions. Modern science backs this up. Studies on cold exposure therapy show that brief, intentional discomfort like cold showers boosts dopamine levels by up to 250%, while intermittent fasting has been linked to improved mental clarity and emotional regulation. The Stoics didn't have MRI machines, but they understood the principle: comfort weakens, challenge fortifies. When you willingly face small adversities, the larger ones lose their power to destabilize you. Here's how to put this into practice today. Start with something simple, a cold shower. Not an ice bath, just turning the knob to cool for the final 30 seconds of your usual routine. Notice what happens. At first, your body will rebel, your breath quickens, your muscles tense, but then something shifts. You realize you're still standing. You're okay. That moment when discomfort meets acceptance is where resilience is born. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching philosophy, framed it as the art of knowing what you can endure. You're not just building tolerance to cold water, you're proving to yourself that you can handle more than you think. For a deeper challenge, try a fasting day, not for weight loss, but for mental clarity. Skip one meal and observe the sensations, the hunger pangs, the impulse to reach for a snack out of habit rather than need. Seneca described this as testing the boundaries of your freedom. When you realize you can choose not to react to every discomfort, you reclaim agency over your impulses. That meeting that ran late, the delayed flight. These become minor inconveniences rather than crises, because you've trained your mind to distinguish between discomfort and danger. The key is intentionality. This isn't about suffering for its own sake. It's about remembering that you're stronger than your cravings for constant ease. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during war and plague, wrote, "The cucumber is bitter. Throw it away, there are brambles in the path, go around, that's all you need to know." Voluntary discomfort strips away the drama of adversity, revealing it for what it is: temporary, survivable, often insignificant in the grand scheme. So here's your invitation. Pick one small hardship this week: a cold shower, a skipped meal, even leaving your phone at home during a walk. Not to prove anything to others, but to remind yourself of a truth the Stoics knew well. The less you fear discomfort, the more freedom you'll find in every moment. Because resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build, one voluntary challenge at a time. There's a split-second space between what happens to you and how you respond, a tiny gap where freedom lies. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who turned personal hardship into timeless wisdom, called this the space between stimulus and response. It might sound abstract, but think of the last time someone cut you off in traffic or made a snide comment. That flash of heat in your chest, the urge to snap back or honk angrily, that's the moment Epictetus is talking about. most of us treat that gap like it doesn't exist, reacting on autopilot as if we're puppets jerked by invisible strings. But Stoicism teaches something radical. In that sliver of silence, you have the power to choose. This is where the Stoic pause comes in, a deliberate breath between what you feel and what you do. Ancient Stoics didn't have the modern count to 10 rule, but the principle was the same. When faced with provocation, they'd mentally step back, like a general surveying a battlefield before giving orders. Seneca described this as tying a knot around your mind, creating just enough friction to interrupt the spiral of reaction. The goal isn't to suppress emotion, it's to prevent emotion from steering the ship. Picture a pot of boiling water. Left unchecked, it'll boil over and make a mess, but lift the lid for just a moment and the pressure releases harmlessly. That's what the pause does for your reactions. Here's how to practice it today. Next time you feel triggered, whether it's a rude email, a child's tantrum, or the 100th interruption of your workday, freeze. Literally stop moving. Notice the physical sensations, the clenched jaw, the quickened pulse. Then, before you speak or act, count slowly to 10. Not to distract yourself, but to create space for your rational mind to catch up. In those seconds, ask, what outcome do I actually want here? Because reactions are often about the past, venting frustration, proving a point, defending your ego. Responses are about the future, building understanding, solving the problem, preserving your peace. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching philosophy, knew this intimately. He taught that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. That co-worker who talks over you in meetings, your pause lets you decide, is this a battle worth fighting, or is it wiser to let it go? The Stoic pause isn't passivity, it's strategy. Like a chess player considering 3 moves ahead, you're choosing the play that serves your long-term goals, not just momentary relief. For a deeper layer, try this twist. Pair your pause with a mantra. Marcus Aurelius used, "This too shall pass," to ground himself in impermanence. Yours might be, "Is this necessary?" Or, "What would my best self do?" The words don't matter as much as the habit they create, a mental speed bump before action. Studies in behavioral psychology show that even a 2-second delay can reduce impulsive decisions by over 30%. The Stoics were ahead of the curve. They knew that the pause is where character is built, one conscious choice at a time. So here's your challenge. Today, when you feel that familiar surge of irritation or hurt, don't suppress it. Don't let it control you either. Instead, stand in the gap, count, breathe, ask, and watch what happens when you replace reaction with response, because mastery over that tiny space. That's the birth of real power. Legacy isn't built from what we own, but from what we leave behind, not just in wills and estates, but in the memories of those we touch and the values we embody. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire yet wrote privately about the fleeting nature of material wealth, posed this piercing question: what is it you're trying to achieve? Fame, wealth, or the tranquility of knowing you've lived with virtue? His answer was clear: act for the common good, because what benefits the hive benefits the bee. That's the heart of Stoic legacy. Not amassing treasures, but planting seeds of kindness, wisdom, and service that outlast your lifespan. Consider the modern obsession with accumulation. We fill storage units with belongings we rarely see, upgrade phones before the old ones break, and measure success by square footage. But contrast that with the quiet power of influence. A teacher who sparked curiosity in a child, a neighbor whose generosity became local legend, a parent whose patience shaped generations. These are the echoes that linger. The Stoics knew this intimately. Seneca, who could have lived in opulence, chose instead to mentor Nero with mixed success and write letters that still guide readers 2 millennia later. His wealth long gone, his words alive in every bookstore. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine your home vanished tomorrow, leaving only the intangible, your reputation, your relationships, the lessons you've shared. What would remain? That's your real legacy. Epictetus, born into slavery, left no property, just teachings that freed minds across centuries. He framed it bluntly. You're a soul carrying a corpse, as the Stoics say. The body decays, possessions crumble, but principles, they're immortal. This isn't about rejecting material comfort. It's about prioritizing what transcends it. Think of two neighbors. One fills their garage with collector's items. The other spends weekends coaching kids soccer. In 50 years, the collectibles might gather dust in an auction house, while those now grown players tell stories about the coach who believed in them. Legacy isn't a grand gesture reserved for saints or celebrities. It's the sum of small choices, listening when it's easier to interrupt, creating when it's safer to consume, giving when you could hoard. So tonight, as you walk through your home, ask yourself, if this were all gone tomorrow, what would I want my impact to have been? Not what you owned, but how you loved. Not your net worth, but your moral weight. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself like, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. That's the invitation, to live so fully in alignment with your values that your legacy becomes inevitable, not something you leave behind, but something you've already woven into the world, one intentional act at a time. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced barbarian invasions, political betrayals, and personal loss, yet his private journal reveals a mind trained to see obstacles not as dead ends, but as raw material for growth. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. This radical reframe is the heart of Stoic resilience. Picture a blacksmith hammering red-hot iron. The metal resists, but each strike shapes it into something stronger. The obstacle isn't just overcome, it's the very thing that forges transformation. History offers a striking example in Cato the Younger, the Stoic statesman who made defiance his art. When Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon to seize power, Cato didn't just oppose him, he turned his own defeats into lessons for Rome. Exiled, he used the time to study philosophy. Mocked, his integrity grew more unshakable. Even his final act, choosing suicide over surrender, became a rallying cry against tyranny. What made Cato extraordinary wasn't his suffering, but his ability to alchemize it. As Seneca observed, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Now bring this into your own life. That problem gnawing at you, the failed project, the strained relationship, the financial setback. What if it's not a wall but a doorway? A startup founder whose first venture collapsed used the rubble to build a stronger business model. A writer whose manuscript was rejected 20 times mined those critiques to craft a bestseller. The pattern holds. What feels like resistance is often redirection. Try this reframing exercise today. Take one current challenge and ask, how could this obstacle secretly serve me? A job rejection might free you for a better fit. A health scare could prioritize self-care. Even frustration in traffic becomes practice in patience. The goal isn't to pretend hardships don't hurt. It's to stop seeing yourself as their victim. Like a sailor adjusting sails to harness opposing winds, you're learning to move forward through what once held you back. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his greatest triumph was mastering this mental shift. Our actions may be impeded, he noted, but there can be no impeding our intentions or dispositions. The obstacle isn't in your path, it is the path, and every step you take across it leaves the ground more solid for those who follow. Your surroundings are never neutral. They are either reinforcements of your values or silent saboteurs of your peace. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who could have lived in marble halls, chose instead a modest villa with sparse furnishings and open spaces. He wasn't rejecting beauty, he was curating it. In one of his letters, he described his home as a refuge, not a showcase, a place where every object served a purpose and every empty corner was an invitation to breathe. That's the essence of Stoic environment design, creating spaces that don't just hold your life but elevate it. Think about your own space right now. Is it a reflection of who you aspire to be, or a museum of accumulated habits? That stack of unread magazines, the chair buried under laundry, the kitchen counter crowded with gadgets you rarely use, these aren't just physical clutter. They're visual noise, tiny drains on your attention every time your eyes pass over them. The Stoics knew what modern neuroscience confirms: our environments shape our thoughts. A Princeton study found that physical clutter reduces focus and increases cortisol levels, the stress hormone. Your home isn't just where you live, it's where your mind either flourishes or falters. Here's how to start small, the Stoic way. Today, reclaim just 1 square foot, a single drawer, a shelf, or even your nightstand. Empty it completely. Then, as you return each item, ask Seneca's question: does this serve my purpose or distract from it? That extra phone charger, either use it or release it. The half-empty lotions, consolidate or discard. This isn't about minimalism for its own sake. It's about creating intentional space for what aligns with your values. Like pruning a garden, you're not just removing dead weight, you're making room for what can bloom. Now, close your eyes and visualize your ideal space. Not a sterile showroom, but a living sanctuary. Maybe it's a reading nook with just a chair and good lighting, or a workspace free of tangled cables. The Stoics called this fantasia the practice of holding a clear mental image of your aspirations. Marcus Aurelius used it to prepare for challenges. You can use it to design environments that pull you toward your best self. Your surroundings should feel like an extension of your inner calm, a place where every object whispers, focus, or rest instead of shouting, deal with me. The magic lies in the ripple effect. That one decluttered drawer becomes a shelf, then a room, then a mindset. Seneca's villa wasn't built in a day, but each choice to prioritize space over stuff was a brick in his fortress of tranquility. So start where you are. The goal isn't perfection, it's progression. Because when your environment mirrors your values, you're no longer fighting your surroundings to find peace. You're living in it. Stoic simplicity isn't about emptying your life until it's barren. It's about clearing away the noise so you can finally hear the music. Over the course of this journey, we've explored how this ancient philosophy cuts through the clutter of possessions, expectations, and distractions, leaving only what truly serves you. It's not just a tidying exercise for your home or calendar. It's a deep recalibration of how you engage with the world. Imagine standing at the edge of a lake after the ripples have settled. That's the clarity Stoicism offers, a reflection of your values, undistorted by the chaos of excess. But here's the truth: this isn't a one-time purge. It's a practice like tending a garden. Weeds will always creep back in, new obligations, impulsive purchases, old habits resurfacing. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, wrote daily reminders to himself because he understood that simplicity isn't a destination, it's a way of moving through the world. You don't fail when you accumulate clutter, you only fail when you stop noticing it. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal hardship into timeless wisdom, left us with a compass for this journey. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That's the heart of it. Real abundance isn't measured in what you own, but in how little you need to feel whole. It's the difference between a life weighed down by constant craving and one lifted by contentment. So where do you begin? Start small. Pick one exercise from this video, whether it's the Stoic pause before reacting, a nightly gratitude list, or reclaiming just 1 square foot of physical space. This isn't about overhauling your life overnight. It's about proving to yourself that change is possible, one intentional choice at a time. And remember, you're not alone in this. The Stoics were a community of practitioners learning from one another's struggles and insights. Share your journey in the comments, what you've let go of, what you've discovered, even the obstacles you're still facing. Because the beauty of Stoic simplicity isn't just in the space it creates, it's in the conversations that space makes possible. So take a deep breath. Look around and ask yourself, what's one thing, just one, that I'm ready to release? The answer might surprise you, because sometimes the smallest step forward is the bravest act of